All right, welcome to the Max Lives Midland show. I'm Grant Murschel.
Welcome back to the Max Lives Midland show. I'm your weekly tour guide, Kevin LeDuc, and this week is a celebration, and I went looking, but I couldn't find any, and also I didn't really know if we were supposed to, but I want to get some of those poppers, where you pull the string and there's a huge explosion, because this is going to be a really fun episode, and there's going to be some really great stuff coming out throughout this episode, and I think a lot of stuff that the community is really going to be excited about, but I'm really excited because you're here today. So you might know him from a few things. This is Grant Murschel. He may have sold you furniture. He may have played volleyball with you at the community center. He may have been planning director if you were at a public meeting a few years ago. Or you might have just seen him out in the community at one of his favorite third places. So welcome and thanks for joining us, Grant.
Hey, thank you, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
This is a long time coming, and it's honestly surprising we haven't had you on a little bit sooner, speaking of the stuff that we talk about on this show and all the themes that seem to come out. They're right down your alleyway, and you'd honestly be a great guest. But we wanted to wait specifically for today because there's a couple things that we're going to be talking about and some big announcements. But all this has a really interesting journey, I feel like, for you coming to Midland and being a Midlander. And when I first met you, a lot of people called you Mr. Midland, and that's how a lot of people knew you. And I don't know if you liked that nickname or not, and you probably weren't offended. But, I heard that quite often about you. So I'm just curious, how does a Mr. Midland come to Midland and become Mr. Midland?
Sure. No, that's, very loaded question. And I always flattered when people called me Mr. Midland because it really did kind of reinforce what a lot of my passions and a lot of my connection to the community that's been built over the last decade plus. So actually moved to Midland in 2014. So it's been over 10 years. And so started with the city in 2013. And that's, I think, what got me really connected into the community was joining the planning department and working there for 9 years total before I shifted into private sector just better part of 3 years ago. But to kind of tell the story a little bit more about how I got to Midland, actually kind of have a cool background in terms of not necessarily always living in Michigan. So born in Colorado, lived in the state of Wyoming before moving to Freeland, graduated from Freeland for high school, and then ended up at Montana State University for my undergrad for 4 years, and graduated from there and thought, I kind of want to come back to the Midwest for a little bit faster pace of life. It's not crazy fast paced, but it's a little bit more than the Mountain West, and had an urban planning degree and earth science, GIS focused, and did some internships in Saginaw County, and then ultimately got connected with the city of Midland to start there as their community development planner in 2013.
Do you miss the mountains at all? I know you were living in Freeland and then you go out west. Was it kind of one of those things of like, well, I'm just going to go back to flatland country?
That honestly is probably the big thing I do miss is the elevation, the hiking, the skiing, all that good stuff. But in terms of the people, there's great people in this part of Michigan, and that's always kind of what drew me back is just really thinking about what's the next few decades going to be for this region. And I think there's a lot of really exciting activity that's happening in Colorado, of course. In Montana, Bozeman is just exploding in population. And there's a lot of natural drivers for that, but it's not necessarily like the really hard, gritty community work that places like Midland and our whole region need in order to create really attractive places for people to want to come. And you can see that just in population statistics. We're not growing in leaps and bounds by any means. So we got to do some work and build the attraction efforts.
Absolutely. I always used to joke if anyone moved away from Midland, it was a safe bet that we're going to Denver. They're just, they're going out west. They probably moved to Denver if you don't see them anymore.
Yep.
But you talked a little bit about the location and the growth that this place could have in the next, few decades, or there's concern about regression as well. What I always thought made our area of the state really interesting is that proximity to Detroit, but also that proximity to what many would consider the North. We've said it on this show before. I believe the dividing line between North and where North is here in Michigan, everyone says you're going up north. I think it's right here. I think you go north of US 10 and the world kind of drops off a little bit. But there's also tons of fun and opportunity up there as well. But we talk about our space here. So what type of principles do you believe could really ignite the passion for people to want to move to this area?
Sure. So it's actually funny that you say the line about up north, because I never really thought about that until a couple of years ago when I was in Iceland. And I was at a hot springs, and we kind of heard people with American accents across the way with the group I was with. And we just got to talking, and the one girl was from Bloomfield Hills, and then she had her boyfriend who was from France with her, and he had spent some time in Michigan. And when we said we're from Midland, he was like, oh, that's where the trees start. And I never thought about Midland as that kind of place. But honestly, when you drive 75 north out of Detroit, coming this way, you get on US 10. A lot of people say the Milwaukee Bridge is kind of their up north gateway, but really the trees do start at Midland, and that always kind of shifted my perspective to really understand that we've got a lot of things that people see out of us that maybe we don't even recognize in ourselves. That's really attracted. That can attract or be creating something that's desirable in the community. But I guess to kind of back to your question on principles about desirability, to me, I've always really thought about really the body of research around livability. So The Economist magazine always produces their livability index, which talks about things like healthcare and education and democracy and strength of institutions and quality of life things, cultural things, but also just things all the way down to like cafe culture. And so when you look at a lot of the cities across the world that actually have really high standards of livability, they're measured on a number of things. But one of the most important places is like the concept of third place, which I know we'll talk about a little bit today. But there's also a lot of metrics around just being able to organically interact with one another. And so I've always kind of thought that that was something that was really missing in Midland when I first arrived back in 2013. Actually, while we're recording this today, Live Oak Coffee House is celebrating their 8th anniversary, which is crazy to think about that it's been 8 years that third place has been here. But in the last 10, 12 years, there's been a lot of growth that's happened, I think, in Midland around places that are really intentional to try and bring people together and really build that community. And there's a lot of other efforts besides just physical things, honestly, like Max Lives Midland, which is really intentional around trying to create community, bring people together, foster that sense of well-being and connection. And I would say that really, if you summarize what drives the work that I do, it's around trying to do that intentionally in a variety of means.
Well, and you mentioned a couple things within that conversation there. First of all, Live Oak Coffee House being a third place, it's a catalyst for change within our community.
Hmm.
It invented a neighborhood.
Hmm.
Midtown didn't exist as a thing before Live Oak Coffee House was here.
Yep.
And now Live Oak Coffee House is here, and we're recording a podcast in the same building.
Yep.
And that's absolutely incredible. And that shows you how great businesses can really change an area, but also just really intentional people. So I give Aaron Decro and Renee Decro a lot of credit for their vision and their love for this community and investing in it. But then you talked about Max Lives Midland, and I never had the skills of community development in a physical sense. My skills were always in communication and art and, these liberal art style skills.
Sure.
And I wanted to bring that to a different place, and I think Max Lives Midland becomes a digital hub that kind of acts as a third place as well.
Yeah.
And that's really the goal of the show, and that's going to continue to be the goal of the show. And we just appreciate you kind of giving your view on that.
Sure. Well, and I think if I can kind of jump in, I think it really connects into kind of the physical work that I did while I was at the city a little bit more. So I joined the city planning department in 2013, actually got promoted to the director of planning in 2017 and was there until 2022. And while I was there was a lot of efforts that were happening in the community around collective action. At the time, there were discussions around like farmers market, which I know is definitely a controversial one, but also the downtown streetscape. There was a housing study that was done in 2018. A lot of collaborations around use of federal funds to support homelessness and housing issues. And a lot of that work that's done at the nonprofit level is supported in some way, shape, or form by some of the funds that come out of the planning department through a federal grant. So I was very much engaged in a lot of that kind of work in the nonprofit sphere, but also in a lot of the physical improvements too. So things like the Indian and Buttles Corridor Improvement Project or the Road Diet. That was definitely a project I was closely tied to, but Ashman and Rod really kind of in the beginning parts in the Center City redevelopment project as well. All those physical things in my mind, they were all very much connected to this desire to want to create community and areas, intentionality around placemaking, all around trying to create really great pockets of built environment within the community, different than how we've designed them in the last few decades. And this could be a whole entire show about me getting on a soapbox about motordom and over planning for automobiles and under planning for people. And a lot of times people say, well, there's people driving the automobiles, so aren't you really kind of planning for them? But when I say people, I really mean like getting out of your vehicle and experiencing the community in a way that's at a very human scale, whether that's biking or it's walking or it's going about it in kind of a way that's not just the quick bursts that you get in the experience of the automobile. So I guess I say all that because in my mind, it's all very tightly related. It's just the medium that you're working in, whether it's digital or it's physical or it's community or all those things. I think that's why you and I connected like we have because of the shared passion around that.
And if anybody else wants to learn more about the Indian and Buttles Corridor Improvement Project, there's an 8-part video series put out there by the city of Midland about 7 years ago that Grant and I collaborated on. What a great way to spend an afternoon if you want to get caught up on everything related to that project.
For
So
sure.
yeah, you and
For
I
sure.
worked together at the city, and that was one of the things that I really appreciated about you is you were always really consistent in your messaging, and because it comes from a place of it's something you believe in. It's not just a line for you. It's not a political move. It's not a move to try and create this, these higher density places or just more walkable places. It's
Yep.
it's
Yep.
truly in your soul. You want to create places for people, and that's something I really admire. And I think it's a lot of the reason why you and I really, really get along. And
Yeah.
through that, also when you first got to the city, you became really involved with MyPros. I would
Sure.
say early on in what the current iteration of MyPros is. I know it kind of existed before that, but it was really a revamped time period for MyPros. And out of that came the community crowdfund that we've talked about on the show before when I had Mary Beth Pincala on from the
Yeah.
Midland Business Alliance. But can you talk a little bit about, and you still work on the crowdfund with us to this day, so can you talk a little bit about the importance of crowdfunding and why you believe that is an incredible medium to make a difference, and then also
Sure.
just about specifically the MyPros crowdfund?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it kind of grew out of this time, back in maybe when I was like 24, 25, and there was a lot of people around the same time that would get together and we'd hear this kind of refrain around the younger people. And maybe it still exists today. I'm not necessarily as connected to those groups as I was before, but it was always this idea that I wish Midland had this or I wish Midland had that. And I think that can be sort of a mindset that people get into at any place in their life or possibly in any location. I mean, there's people that live in the most beautiful places in the world and wish that they had other things. So one of the things that I remember connected kind of the group that kicked off the crowdfund in the beginning was how can we create a very tangible way that the Young Professional Network and expand it to the broader community can actually participate in getting the kinds of businesses that we wish we had in Midland off the ground. And we knew there was a whole ecosystem of business support, small business support, development, like the SBDC and CMURC and the Business Alliance had
Too many acronyms.
I know, sorry. The Small Business Development Center and the CMU Research Corporation that does a lot of incubating of businesses, but we knew that there was kind of a role or a missing piece. And one of the things that I had witnessed in other communities was crowdfunding for businesses and doing it in a way that was really giving people an opportunity to participate from the beginning and helping it get off the ground or simply taking it to the next level. And if you can do that in a way that tells a story and connects the business owners to the broader community, you can do a really fantastic job of creating a market that has a very tangible feeling of connection to that business. And so that is very, very important to us when it comes to the crowdfund for MyPros, because it's not necessarily just about the business support. It really is around connecting businesses to the broader community and building a sense of connection and ownership in a way that you really can't if you're simply just going to patronize a brand new business. So that's been just a fantastic program. We've had a number of businesses that have participated, and the hope is to try and get people to realize that they can do this for their own businesses. They don't have to necessarily partner with MyPros. Of course, there's been fantastic collaboration with the Community Foundation and impact investing over the years on that to be able to stretch the dollars a little bit more. But when I think about the business recipients that have participated, it really is a lot of those businesses that I think a lot of people in Midland frequent and find to be very high quality. They're all independently owned, independently operated, locally owned, locally operated places that keep that money in large part here in the community. And then it's fun to see how they then reinvest that in other areas or expand or otherwise change kind of as time has gone on. But it's hopefully a program that people see as one that's really built a stronger connection to their community in a very intentional way.
Nothing feels better than hearing somebody have that ownership over those organizations too. When you are talking to somebody within MyPros, and I've brought the example up before, but the first time that I ever heard anyone say, "Hey, do you see that patio out there in front of in front of Three Bridges? We did that," and I was just like, "We did that? That is amazing! Like
Yeah.
that's exactly what we want to hear. We did do that." And Three Bridges is a place I still pop into and feel a close relationship to. Allie Huntoon with Allied Group Fitness continues to be
Absolutely.
a great friend. These are businesses that we continue to go to over and over. Aviator Cookie Company, Pizza Baker's
Hmm.
my favorite pizza in town, and the
Hmm.
list goes on. And I think these are places that honestly you helped put into a place of success, but also just driving that ship with my pros and moving the group forward. So really
Yep.
appreciate that forethought and you being able to bring those morals and those principles that you hold to this community, because it's made a huge difference for people that don't even understand that you had any involvement in that. And that's pretty cool. And I'm sure you probably wouldn't talk about those projects in that manner, but
Yeah. Well,
it's,
no, because I mean, it really has been a huge group effort. I
yeah.
mean, if I think about the people that have been on the committee for My Pros, there's countless of folks that have really helped engage in a variety of ways, from just simply trying to get the word out, or definitely giving financial donations to the businesses, or doing the videos in the case of like Dustin Newmeyer and others.
Yeah.
So it's been a really fantastic effort to see people come together, and then like crowdfunding day when those campaigns go live. I mean, I've never, in very few instances, I guess, have I had that kind of
Energy.
rush and energy and feeling like, holy cow, like we're really doing this. And then you have like folks like Grove Tea Lounge that do it in less than 24 hours. And there's just this really great excitement that comes from it. And all of that is energy and connection that then translates into ideally and hopefully patronizing of those businesses over the long term for their long term success.
And if you take it to the higher level, you're looking at great leaders in their own organizations, like Sharon Mortensen at the Midland Area Community Foundation or Tony
Hmm.
Stamas at the Midland Business Alliance, and those
Yep.
two organizations having that partnership with the crowd fund. But then also it feeding up to this greater community need. If you talk about our community's four focus areas, and one of those being building our livelihood, that's
Hmm.
an innovative way to accomplish something within the community and bring a business forward while including as many people as you possibly can.
Right.
And Maxwell's Midland, as being a show that represents the Community Success Panel,
Yep.
that organization that established those four focus areas. How incredible to be able to talk about it here. And
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
it's just awesome to be able to reflect on it.
For sure.
And you've been a part of all these great development projects and then also community development in general. But you made a career shift not too long ago, a few years ago, where you went to Space Incorporated and you got into a little bit of a different kind of development. So how did that feel going from public sector to private sector, and what does that look like and what are the differences? And just talk a little bit about Space as an organization, which is a longstanding organization here in town.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So really, what attracted me into the private sector was around this idea that there's a lot of folks within the business world and the development community that spend lots of time, energy, resources to be able to get projects to come forward that then need to get reviewed by the public. So when I was at the city, I facilitated the process of the city approvals for a lot of those developments. And that was a piece of the broader puzzle. And it was actually interesting. I think a lot of times the Mr. Midland moniker, if you will, or nickname rather, came from just me having knowledge about different things that were coming into the community. And so when you're in the planning department, you do hear a lot about those things before it maybe makes local news or people hear widely about them. And so one of the things that I always kind of thought about was, at one point in my career, I do want to try jumping into public or into private sector and be able to be intentional around spending efforts and time to be able to do development in some small scale to get started and eventually build into being able to do more of that kind of built environment, that intentional built environment in the community. And to do it in a way that really still meets a market need, but also that's going to be added benefit to the surrounding neighborhood and to the community in general. So Space had an opportunity for me to join, build out their real estate development division. So for over 2 years now, I've been with them. They're a company that does, by and large, great office interiors and interior design, not just offices, but a whole bunch of other sectors in the furnishing world and interior design world. And it's been a fantastic opportunity to really learn about small business, be able to learn about the ins and outs of how to manage a team and a small team like they have, to be able to do some really great, fantastic things. And in my time with Space, I've actually been able to do like the furnishing for the community center. That was a project that I worked closely on, and going in and working out there every day is like, it's great. It's great to see people use it, and it looks fantastic, but it's also super functional. So it's been an awesome opportunity to have those types of projects, plus a whole host of other ones that I've been able to work on, and have that experience within the interior design world, which is not too far off from the community planning world. It's simply just at a different scale. So it's been a really great fit. And I'll be actually pivoting into a new role here shortly. But it's been just really wonderful, and I'm staying connected with Space to still do work for them for the long term. And it's been nice to be able to be part of the teams that are doing the work, and hopefully, and actually just recently was able to present something to them or to the city for approval and actually kind of take that step to be able to be on the other side of the table, if you will.
That's super cool. And, Space, it's a women-owned business, which is really awesome. And
Yep.
how long has Space been around now?
Since the mid-90s.
Okay.
Yeah. So they do fantastic work, and not just here in Midland, but all over the country. A lot of federal government work and things that they're involved in, and just really fantastic ownership. Patty and Kathy Hobum are just great community members and great mentors of mine, and it's been wonderful.
And you talk about the value of having good mentors. So when you're looking in that space of mentorship or leading, how do you feel really the importance of having a good educational system and folks to support you?
Yeah, no, it's paramount importance. I mean, you really do have to have. I kind of think about things in ecosystems, and
Yeah.
there's different components of a community's ecosystem, and one is being able to give opportunities to folks that are local to be able to allow them to explore things as they're getting older through educational systems. So kind of throughout middle school or high school, and then as they kind of bridge into what's going to happen after high school, whether that's skilled trades or it's college or the like. But I do think that there's a lot of importance to having the right kind of systems in place and the right kind of access for opportunities for students to be able to choose where they want to go and explore. Because I think back to when I was in high school, I would take like a career test, and it'd be like, you should be an air traffic controller or an architect. And I was like, I don't think air traffic control is really what I want to do. And I always wanted to be an urban planner since I was like in my early teens. And that was never an option on like the standardized career like quiz that you took. And so it took me a little bit of time to find that program at Montana State and really find kind of where I was going to excel. But there was a lot of people along the way that helped me get there and opened up doors or gave me opportunities to explore what it was like to be an urban planner. And I think without them, I just would not be where I'm at today. So long list of folks I could go on about, but I think they're very critical components to just the growth of young people.
I think it's really funny because you've worked at these other roles now and you've been in these different positions and you're about to enter a new one really soon. But about 5 or 6 years ago, you and I had a conversation and I said, if you weren't doing planning, what would you be doing? And obviously you've done some other things since then. But your answer was, I wouldn't actually do this, but I just met someone. You were traveling somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
And they said they were a vigilante planner. And you're like,
yes.
What does that even mean? And it's like they're going out and like making this difference in their community. And you're like, I think I could do some vigilante planning.
It's true. I remember that. I actually thought about that on the way here. There was a guy who was plowing some sidewalks with a little bit of equipment and a kind of vigilante snow plowing, but all to the benefit of the community.
Correct, yeah.
And yeah, the gentleman that I met in Australia was all about what he was doing back in Norway, which was pretty cool. It's fun stuff, just things I would never do. It's a little bit risky, but at the same time, like I can understand the thought process behind it, because sometimes there are intersections that do need a crosswalk,
sure.
or sometimes there are intersections that would benefit from a little bit more lighting. So, that kind of thing.
And sometimes there's intersections and skill sets that bring you into other roles that just kind of make sense, even if you're not really thinking about it. And I'll let you introduce it, but I'm really excited for you to enter your new role. So where are you going to be going to and what are you going to be doing?
Yeah, so shortly I'll be actually joining the Midland Education Services Agency, so ESA, as the director for career and technical education. So very thrilled to be joining their team, and John and the folks that work there are just doing fantastic work when it comes to career and technical education, but certainly around special education and their new facility that they've been renovating and the new wing that they have there at Jefferson and Sugnut. It's just a really exciting time to be part of their organization, and so I'm excited to build on the work that's already been done and kind of see where there's additional opportunity for collaboration in the space around what students are going to do next after they exit high school, or for other folks that are maybe not just at the age 18 or 19, but later on that are really looking for ways to explore what their future career looks like.
I recently saw John give a presentation, and so did you as well, at the Community Success Panel, and I walked away kind of in awe, and I talked about it for a couple days, and I just think the culture over there is in a really cool spot, and they care about people. and they talk a lot about the stuff that we're talking about on the show. It really mirrored the spirit of Maxwell's Midland and the concepts that we put into wanting to talk about and explore a little bit more. And I think you're going to a place that is so good for you. But when you first told me, I was excited as a community member. I was excited for you as my friend, but also as a community member. It's such good news to have somebody with such high qualifications in all sorts of different spaces. Because if you're talking about providing some insight to some of our young ones here in the community, I think you're someone to be looked up to, and the work that you're going to be doing is absolutely awesome. So, what's your day-to-day going to look like, or do you have a clue yet?
Sure. No, I do. So there's a lot of programs that the ESA participates in. Certainly curriculums throughout the high schools that are in Midland County that we support and otherwise have a role within. So there'll be a lot of work around ensuring that those are still going well and that they're meeting the needs of the school districts and certainly the students. I mean, getting in and learning a lot about the outcomes and ways that we can improve outcomes for the students is going to be a big part of the early day-to-day. And I also think, too, there's going to be need to really bring around other parts of the ecosystem that maybe aren't engaged that should be engaged. And so there's going to be a lot of engagement with the business community and other employers within the community to be able to understand what are they looking for and where are their gaps within some of their workforce. Knowing that I play a role in a much larger ecosystem, kind of a sub-ecosystem of the community, the role of what ESA is doing has to kind of be firing on all cylinders in order to support everything else that's happening too. So I think in kind of general terms of what I'll be doing in the day-to-day, I see myself as a player within an ecosystem that can build on that ecosystem and help develop it in the future, which I'm excited for. You know, when I did my master's in public administration, it talked a lot about the importance of understanding systems and how organizations and institutions work with one another. And so it'll plug me back into a lot of that same work and do it with just some great people that I've already met before, and excited to learn all those that are engaged.
You're going to be working closely with Kristen Sovis from the Midland Area Career and College Access Network, and Kristen's one of my coworkers, and I think Kristen's absolutely brilliant. So I get a display of that work quite often, and I don't fully understand it because it's not my area of expertise, but not to use too many nonprofit terminology here, but it's messy work and it's tough work, and you're going to have to really be in those collaborative spaces, and I know you're going to be great at it. So congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it, for sure.
And, you know, that's not the only piece of change coming for you here.
Sure.
I like that you got this Swedish hat on here.
Hey, thank you.
I think it's for a reason. And, you know, I wore my winter cap here and a little bit of barrel and beam from Marquette. So I'm thinking north. And,
good.
You know, I recently realized that there's a term that is closely related to north. And we already touched on it earlier in the show here. We've touched on third places. We've touched on this is where the trees begin. So let's really bring it forward here. What's another word for north?
That's a great question. I would say Nord.
Nord?
Yeah, Nord, Nord.
So if hypothetically you were going to open a bar or a cocktail lounge or a third place, what would you name it?
Probably something with the word Nord in it. I think talking about connection and building community, maybe the word social.
Awesome.
Maybe put them together and start a place in Midland called Nord Social.
That's awesome. And just last week, we talked about the Center City corridor. I had Mike on from Isabella Bank, and we talked a little bit about the future of Center City. And my office is on the Circle at the Midland Area Community Foundation. And just earlier today, I walked around the Circle, and not always the easiest walk around that Circle nowadays, but we're hoping that could possibly change here in the near future. But, you know, you walk around that Circle, and I went and got a delicious pastry over at Sergey's Bakery, and I thought to myself, how great would it be if we had some more spots in this area? So so let's break it down. North Social coming soon, huh?
Yes. Well, you know, and I think, certainly Center City. Very proud to be joining Center City. I think there's been a lot of intentional effort by business owners, by the city, by nonprofit and philanthropy, investing in that area of the city for years, and it's been underinvested, quite frankly. I think there's been a lot of people that have changed the buildings into different areas, but by and large, there's been just kind of underinvestment, especially for where it's at and the traffic volume that's on Saginaw and its connection to a lot of the neighborhoods. So that was what attracted me ultimately to want to buy a building on South Saginaw Road, 415. South Saginaw Road is the one that I purchased last year. And I had some ideas around a third place of sorts, something that might be more cocktail-inspired or neighborhood bar or maybe a little bit of a hybrid, trying to kind of find what niche would really fit within Midland. The Maxwell's Midland show actually got started last year, and I believe you're one of your first guests Brad Tunney, and was on, and he was talking about just a simple intention of wanting to invest in the community that's really given back to him in a lot of meaningful ways. So him and his wife Haley, I had known as really just acquaintances. But then you mentioned to me that Brad is someone that I might be interested in wanting to talk to about partnership on getting something like this off the ground. And so we met last summer to have some conversations and really developed a very close relationship that's led to a business partnership to be able to start Nord Social, which we're thrilled that we're announcing for 2025. It'll be happening this year.
I'm so excited to spend some time at Nord Social, and you mentioned the Maxwell's Midland show being a part of this, and it's honestly my favorite thing that this show could have ever done. And if there's one thing that we can say why the Maxwell's Midland show is successful, it's bringing this together. And if there's a business opening in the community, that's worth it. That's going to provide places for people in a place where a lot more housing's being built. There's going to be more people there. It's going to be a walkable spot that people can get to. Yep. And it's just going to be an incredible thing. And there's another lesson here too, because Brad and I talked pretty extensively that day, both on the show and then a few days prior with our pre-interview. And in that pre-interview, he really spoke about wanting to make a more solid investment in the community and, setting his roots here. And he chose this place and he believes in it. And then on the show, I always ask, looking forward to the future of Midland, what's your one thing that you really want for this community? And he very specifically states that he wants a space in Center City in the Circle area that he can walk to, that he can walk his dogs through that area and a place that he can gather. And one of the big lessons right there was, and I've known Brad for years. First of all, talk to your male friends. Male-to-male relationships are always hilarious with how much we don't talk, because so much came out of that conversation that I didn't understand. We just didn't talk about the Pistons the whole time. So that was one lesson. Hey, talk to your friends out there, guys. But then being able to connect the two of you and you two hitting it off and being able to build this place, it's no one can ever say that the Maxwell's Midland show isn't successful just because of that.
True.
But it's going to be an amazing spot. So what's it going to feel like? What's the vibe going to be like in Center City now at Nord Social?
Sure. So I'll talk about the entity's identity. So really, we did really want to be intentional about the use of the word Nord, because one of the things that I've witnessed in Midland is, as we're sitting here on a cold January day, there's a lot of thought around just struggling through winter and not necessarily thriving, or certainly seasonal depression is a very real thing for a lot of people. And it's tough. It's very tough to go days and days without sun, or to have ice on the roads and deal with all that, and school closings with snow days. And, the list goes on and on for inconveniences that the winter can kind of bring to us. One of the things that's always impressed me about a region of the world that's done it very well is the Scandinavian and Nordic countries. They really lean into it because they know their geography is just something that's the reality to them. Yeah. And we have a lot of options for many people in Midland to fly south to Snowbird, or to otherwise escape down to Florida or other places that are warmer. That's a very privileged thing that a lot of people do. But then there's a lot of people around here that don't necessarily have that, or if they do, it maybe only comes every couple of years. So I've always wanted to be intentional around a project that was going to bring opportunity to the community to be able to think differently about winter, and to do it in a very tangible space that really leans into embracing it, while also not diverting from fantastic spring, summer, fall seasons that we also really get to enjoy in Midland. And so Nord is really a nod to the Scandinavian thought process around really thriving in winter. And I can think about like the Danish concept of hygge, which is around creating coziness and warmth, togetherness. There's Norwegian ideas around being intentional to get out into the weather. Certainly with Swedish concepts too. Swedish fika is another thing that I know some businesses in the community coffee houses largely have kind of pushed at different times, which is around being intentional to leave your work if you can and go grab a nice coffee and a pastry and just kind of have a little bit of a moment to kind of collect yourself, maybe do it with a friend or a coworker, and just kind of have a little bit of an outing. But I think there's a lot of concepts within the Scandinavian cultures that we can really bring to inspire Nord to do it in a very local context, because we know we're in Michigan. There's a lot of fantastic things happening in Michigan. There's lots of brands of like akavit and beer and other things that we can bring into the space that are Michigan based. But I think one thing that we miss that maybe Minnesota does better than Michigan is really this idea of, look, winter's here for us every year. And let's try and be very intentional about how we can all thrive in a way that really leans into it. And so that's a big part of the identity and the space that we're trying to create by Nord. One of the other things I'll talk about too is the building that we purchased had kind of small windows up front,
Yeah.
a little bit of a narrow door, not a lot of daylight. That's something that's very critical in interior design around northern climates, and really being able to thrive is bring as much daylight in as you possibly can in order to be able to have that natural light, which is very important in the winter especially. But I also think it makes what Nord Social will be as a bar different from a lot of other places, because I think a lot of times just naturally, because of how bars have functioned maybe in the US for a number of years, there were kind of these low lit kind of darker places where there's sort of this like concept of like what's really going on in there type of thing, and that's not really what we're trying to create. We want to create something that's warm, it's inviting, it's where you can see people that are in there, a space that's not encouraging heavy drinking, but really just being intentional around creating experiences that are going to bring people together, and to do that in a way that also highlights interior design that's very natural based and Scandinavian inspired overall. So those are the things to expect with Nord Social. I hopefully that gives you a little bit of a better understanding of what we're trying to accomplish.
And you're right there in front of Circle Tech Apartments. You've got a lot more housing being built across the road. There's some a little bit down the street from Kroger that's been completed recently. I know the old East Lawn site, I believe, is approved now for some housing. So people that live in those areas that might have an opportunity to walk there, what's the appeal you would like to make to them?
Well, so I actually was on walkscore.com yesterday. So here's my nerd alert for those listening.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
But no, Walk Score and Bike Score is something that I think probably only urban planners really care about or like get really excited about. But if you think about Midland overall, we've got a lot of sidewalks, we've got a lot of connection, but we also have a very sprawled out community where there's not a lot of density. And, when I first started at Midland, I went to a planning conference and someone's like, how does it feel like working for a suburb of a chemical factory? And I was like, well, yeah, that's
Spicy.
It was. I was like, I don't think that's really us. But when you really look at the built environment in Midland, it's very auto-oriented. It's very spread out. It's lots of single family homes. It creates very, very textbook Americana neighborhoods with the beautiful street trees and a lot of different types of homes. You throw in the mid-century modern elements to it. It's a really fantastic place that's been built. We don't have density and we don't have a lot of walkability, except for like Saginaw Road and East Lawn. That is the highest walk score in the entire community. Because if you think about all the businesses along Saginaw Road and all of the neighborhoods and the housing that exists in that area, that's what creates a walk score to be very high, because you can do a lot of day-to-day need trips by simply being on foot within a 20-minute walking distance. So to be honest, that's really a big part from a quantitative perspective of what attracted me to wanting to purchase a building in Center City, was to really build on a walk score that's already quite high.
I would like to point out that your first apartment in Midland is the corner
It is.
of Saginaw and East Lawn. Was that intentional when you moved
That
here?
was happenstance. Actually, to be honest, I want to be close to Dairy Queen, and that's like right
Fair
there.
enough.
So,
So do I.
yeah.
So do I. All my DoorDash drivers will tell you that.
Yes. Oh, yeah, for sure. I love it. Yeah. When people are like, where do you live? I was like, right by Dairy Queen. They're like, oh, dang, that's great. That is great. And it is. It's been great. I actually live nearby there still, too, to this day. So I haven't moved very far in Midland in that area, but I do walk a lot. I do walk to Kroger. I walk to, when I worked at the city, I'd walk to City Hall or bike to City Hall often. I'm excited to be working for ESA and be able to have an opportunity to bike and walk again. But I think that all of that is my personal preference, but I also think there's a tangible benefit to the community to be able to put a space like Nord Social into a walkable neighborhood that already exists. And one of the most just really things that's really touched me about announcing Nord Social to a lot of people recently is just their thought of like, wow, it's going to be great to have something like that on this side of town.
Yeah.
And so we're hopeful that that's really what people will think, is they'll be like, wow, this is a cool spot for us. It's really close by. Maybe we'll walk there. Maybe we'll bike there, or maybe we'll drive. It's going to allow for a lot of options.
Boulevard Lounge, Nord Social, name a more iconic duo. It's going to be a good time over there on that side of town. So
Oh yeah.
we're really, really excited about it. And you mentioned the ESA as well. It's all kind of right in that area. And then I live up here on the other side of downtown, and I love being able to model that behavior as well. So like walking to work in the summertime, and I know we're
Mhm.
going to see you out on foot, walking near our building here as well, near the
Yes.
circle there.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's
Oh,
going to
yeah.
be great.
Yep.
Really looking forward to that. And nothing that makes me more excited than when I'm walking to work and someone's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm walking to work,"
Yes.
because
It's true.
we can.
It's true. It's true, and it's amazing. I mean, Midland's a small place, so you will people will see you walking, and you'll see people that are walking. And I was kind of joking. I'm like, just give a friendly beep or a wave. No other gesture would be great, but yeah. So it's cool, and I think I'd love to see more people do it.
Yeah.
Especially because this is soapbox time. Just real
Yeah,
quick,
let's go for it.
but like a lot of the outcomes that we have, just our day-to-day way that we live and in such an auto-oriented place, we don't bake in health outcomes to our day-to-day.
No.
So like we get in our car and we drive to work, or we drive to school, or we drive to do X, Y, and Z. We may then go drive for food at lunch, or we may go drive and do other errands, and then we then drive to the gym to work out. And it always kind of cracks me up because I'm like, if we could trade maybe one or two of those trips in a given week or maybe in a given day, there would be a lot more health outcome baked into our ability to get from place to place. And our built environment in pretty much every place outside of New York City in North America, maybe Toronto is another one too, but just about everywhere in the United States, you really can't do that because we
No.
built such auto-oriented places. And there's a lot of people that want that.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of people who simply can't drive or choose not to drive. And then I really do think about
It's a privilege.
it is, and what's their experience to get from place to place if they don't have the option to drive. It's a very, very challenging lifestyle when you have such limited access to things. So I think there's benefit to folks that are wanting those health outcomes, but there's also benefit to other people that just can't drive and could have better access. So yeah, so I'll hop off my soapbox, but that is very front of mind when I think about why buy a condo in that area, or why live in that area, or why buy a building and invest in a business in that area, or why, quite frankly, if you look at my Facebook, why I get so excited when there's other businesses like Sergey's Bakery or others that are coming, because it's so important. Like all these things are really cool and exciting, and they offer a lot of variety and livability to the community and should be celebrated because people work really hard to do this kind of stuff. So why not kind of elevate and just cheer them on and give them the right kind of promotion that they could deserve or desire, because it's just good stuff for Midland and for the community in general.
I love that you positioned everything as it's a place for people, it's a place for people to gather. You talked about that third place concept, and you were looking into all these opportunities for people to share that space with one another and the health outcomes. And it's not necessarily a place where you're looking to position like heavy drinking going on. But I am curious about the menu because I think it's going to be a little
Sure.
bit different than what most people are familiar with in an area like Midland.
Yeah. So I think we've got some inspiration bars of ours across certainly Michigan, definitely down in the Detroit area, where we've really tried to be intentional around how do we create a space that's going to be conducive to interaction.
Yeah.
So one of the things you'll see at Nord Social is we won't have table service, so you won't have like a server come to your table. Instead, you'll order at a single point of sale up at the bar, very similar to what happened at Larkin Beer Garden
Yeah.
for many years. And then you'll grab your drinks and you'll go sit down at a table. If you place a food order at that time, you'll be able to wait kind of there for it, or it'll be brought out to you in kind of a way that allows you to then go to your table, hang out with the people that you're with, and then go at your own pace. And we're hopeful, and what we've seen in a lot of places, and what you see at a lot of these other places, is people go at a pace that's really very connected to one another. It's not about like having a lot of drinks. It's really about going, connecting with others, and enjoying the environment and the people that are created. Or maybe there'll be some programming, or not maybe, there will be some programming that we'll do around kind of a social club concept, and that'll be intentional to be able to allow people to kind of have their space. So if you want to come and you want to have a really in-depth conversation for 2 hours, you probably won't get many interruptions. But if you want to come and interact with some other tables, maybe there's other people that are hopping around the place that are going to interrupt you here or there. Kind of like what happens at Live Oak if you have meetings and things there, or any coffee house in town. But that's really intentional around it. So the menu itself is really intended to build a very quick service model by the bartender up front. So we'll have draft beers, we'll have beer in a shot concept. We'll do a Nordic beer and a shot.
All right.
So I'm very excited to maybe get the word akavit out to the community a little bit more. It's a Nordic spirit that's kind of a cousin to gin, but it's got a little bit more coriander and ants and dill spices to it. And then we'll have some craft cocktails that we'll do, some wine and some ciders. And then our food menu is something that we're continuing to work on. But we know we've got some opportunity to do some partnerships with food trucks or some other pop-up chefs in the community too. So we're really looking to be intentional around that. And that's all being developed right now.
Nord Social, a place for people, and that's what we're looking forward to.
Yes, I'm excited. I hope people will be thrilled and definitely want to come and hang out.
For the people and by the people, and that's long been a motto of the Midland Area Community Foundation. And through this, there's going to be some impact investment going on from the Midland Area Community Foundation to Nord Social. Do you want to talk about that relationship and what that's like?
Yeah, absolutely. So within any kind of business capital stack to get your financing pulled together, your funding pulled together, we were really looking at kind of a partnership of local financial institutions along with the impact investing opportunity that comes from the community foundation. So as you know, I guess to kind of explain that program, a number of years ago, there was intentional thought of the community foundation to say, hey, rather than putting all of our investments into like Wall Street or other types of investments that go all across the world or all across the US, what if we pull a percentage of our assets out and we do intentional kind of triple bottom line idea of investing locally where there would be a financial return, but we know there's a social or a community or an environmental component that's going to be a very tangible local benefit. So
building our livelihood component of the 4 focus areas.
1,000%. And so it's been really great to see the community foundation act in this way because I think there's a lot of things that are at play within a broader macro environment that can be detrimental to a community like Midland that relies on large employers that have a lot of presence outside of Midland. And there's definitely an environment right now where, it's quarterly reports, it's quarterly earnings, it's being driven by this kind of short-term thinking. The community foundation has really thought there's a way to kind of be intentional in a small way to think long term, to be a little bit more patient, to be able to thinking intentional around the things that are being created. And we were very fortunate that the Community Foundation Board of Trustees and the Impact Investing Committee were supportive of our request for a loan to help with our build out for the building. We're completely gutting the building, doing asbestos abatement, some improvements to it, and putting in almost $500,000 into the property itself. In order to get it up to that level that we want the community to be able to have a really great spot for it. So, very thankful to be able to participate with that program, which is in addition to then financing through Isabella Bank and Members First Credit Union. I'm on their board. So it's been fun to really kind of bring multiple parties together. And it's been awesome that people have been so supportive of the business plan and the things that we're doing to help us be successful.
Well, this is an awesome business, and I want a piece of it. So I know that Maxwell's Midland has a piece of this story.
Sure.
So how can community members get a little bit more involved as you guys continue to move forward?
Yeah. So back when we talked about crowdfunding, we that was always kind of a thought is we'd love to do a crowdfund of our own. So we'll do an independent crowdfund where we're going to be partnering with an entity that actually specializes in food and beverage focused crowdfunding. And it's going to be very credit based. So we'll still have tokens of appreciation for options to engage in a mug club or to join us the social club, or for us to be able to have soft openings and early glimpses or private parties depending on contribution level. But everything will be credit based, where there's 20% in addition to what your credits would be. So there's going to be more information that comes out about that here in the next few weeks. But I guess, for anyone listening, if you're interested in wanting to join us from the very beginning, we will do the crowdfund as a way to do that.
Awesome. You heard it here first. Nord Social coming 2025. Get involved. Follow along for more details. And Nord's going to be a fun third place. And we've talked about third places a lot on this show, and we've talked a lot about third places this episode. And we always do a draft. We go 5 things. You do 5 things. I do 5 things.
True. Well, hold on. Did we ever define third place?
I don't know. Can you give me a little definition of
Sure,
third place?
So,
I learned about third places from you, by the way.
Oh, sure. Okay.
I would say about 10 years ago. You were the first person to teach me about third places. So what's a third place?
Sure. So it's in, there's been a lot of, a big body of research around the concept of third place. But in very short part, you have your first place, which is where you live. And you have your second place, which is either your place of employment or a place that kind of gives you a broader connection for those that maybe aren't in the job market. But something that's really intended around like kind of building your livelihood. So, as you know, we kind of have our home worlds, our work worlds, and then there's these places that are in between all of that where you can build community and create connection.
Yeah.
And those are your third places. And there's a huge variety of third places. There's places of worship that can be people's third places.
Yeah.
There's coffee houses. There's local bars. There's, golf courses. I mean, the list goes on and on of what third places are. So it's a very broad category. The way that I kind of use it is around places that are intentionally designed to foster those kind of connections. So they realize that people use their space for that to build those connections. And so they really try and be intentional around fostering that over and over.
Amazing. So as part of that, we want to go down a little bit of a list of our favorite third places. So we're
Sure.
talking about our favorite places that are not work, they're not home, but they're a place for people to gather. And we're going to go top 5 on this. We're going to put some parameters around it. Your top 3, so the first 3 you choose have to be in Midland.
Okay.
And I'm going to give you the floor. As the guest, you always get the first pick.
Al is the first pick. Okay. All right. This is not going to come by surprise to those that have listened to this whole episode. So I'm going to go with Live Oak. And like I said, it's their 8th anniversary. I was just thrilled that Live Oak was built and thought of, and just the intentionality around Midtown. And I always kind of say, if you're looking to just have really interesting run-ins with a whole host of community people, just pop up at Live Oak from like 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on any weekday morning. And you will see like anywhere from 5 to 30 people that I mean, it's crazy. It's awesome. And it's a great environment. It's well designed. It's very comfortable. It's aesthetically pleasing. It's got all the things. So yes, that would be my first choice.
Live Oak's Midland's meeting place. That's what I refer to it as. Even right before this episode, here at JNC Media, Josh from JNC was like taking a photo of someone he knew out here to mess with them and send it to him. And it's like, you just have these type of organic connections with people here.
You do.
At Live Oak Coffee House. That is unbelievable. And I ran into Renee Decker earlier, and I couldn't help it. I just said, I think this is the most important business in Midland in the last 20, 30 years. It's just incredible what they've been able to build, because the social benefits of Live Oak have gone far, far beyond anything anyone could ever imagine, to the point where we don't have the Maxwell's Midland show here if it's not for that. Maybe Brad doesn't come on the show. Maybe you two don't meet. Maybe North Social doesn't open. Maybe Maxwell's Midland doesn't exist at all. I have no idea what the butterfly effect of Live Oak Coffee House not existing would be. It would be extremely detrimental. So
yeah. Oh yeah. All right. So what's your first pick?
So I knew I wasn't going to be able to get Live Oak, giving you the first pick. So I always knew this would end up being my first pick. And for those who listen to the show or watch regularly, this is going to be no surprise to anyone. I'm going to choose Dow Diamond. I love a baseball game, and I love a place that people can gather. And even if it is minor league baseball, it's people getting together for a common thing.
Oh, yeah.
And, I have a lot of friendships that really flourish at the ballpark. And every single year, I just love sitting out on the lawn or standing around the concourse, talking to everyone from the community. And it really doesn't get any better than that, rallying around something that represents your region and your area. And it's not just a space that I see people from Midland in. I really love Dow Diamond because I see people from Gladwin County there, where I'm from Beaverton, and see people from, all over the place. And what a great time. So.
Oh yeah. Great choice. Also aesthetically pleasing. I mean, that place,
beautiful.
Over 15 years old now.
Aged so well.
Yeah, it is brilliant and just is really fantastic. The scale of it on the outside, they were so intentional around nods to mid-century modern architecture and just how it fits into the built environment there, and kind of bridges the manufacturing facility on one side with downtown. It's awesome. Completely agree. And whether you go with yourself or you go with 30 friends, there is space for everyone.
Absolutely.
It's a cool spot. Yeah.
Great leadership under Chris Mudhank currently, and they've always had good leadership too.
Very much so.
But just, you talked about the mid-century modern influence. They're a high A affiliate of the Los Angeles Dodgers, who play in the only mid-century modern stadium in Major League Baseball. And I know it's not intentional for them to be a Dodgers affiliate, but it's just kind of funny it worked out that way. So
definitely.
Yeah. So
very good.
Second pick.
All right. So my second pick is I was thinking intentionally about this, and I thought, maybe one that may be a little RIP behind, but the original Larkin Beer Garden. So I know it's not there on Larkin anymore, but if I think back to just a place that brought me connected to a bunch of people I just hadn't been before, or that helped take some friendships to the next level, or some business relationships to the next level, or just a variety of things. That parking lot was awesome. Like pre pandemic for sure. I mean, I can think back to just it being just full of people and kids and dogs and people that were in full suits, and also people that had just come off of their job working on in construction, or the like. So it was just a really wonderful spot, and I don't know if that counts in a draft of current places, but I'm gonna go with it because LBG has always been fantastic and a great thing that Midland did for downtown.
I think it's still relevant enough, and it's funny because it went away for a little bit over to Dow Diamond, and then it returned back to Larkin. And thank you, you were the manager of it that year, and or at least the person kind of leading that charge. So I really appreciate you bringing it back for at least the 1 year, so we could get one little more taste of it. And it was always funny when it went away to Dow Diamond. I remember Midland Gazette posting something about like there was just something about that parking lot full of rocks, and we loved it. And so yeah, shout out to Midland Gazette, whoever runs that, Ben Tierney. Either way, I thought that was just an amazing place, and I met so many people I'm still friends with to this day.
Yeah,
So-
no, agreed.
But there's an interesting reason why we grew past the necessity for a place like the Larkin Beer Garden, and that's going to be my next pick. So I'm going to jump you.
I was hoping it would be. Okay,
And
all right.
it leads logically to this next place, the Pedestrian Plaza in downtown Midland. And I just really want to thank the city of Midland for having the foresight, and city council for continuing on with this mission to bring the Pedestrian Plaza forward every single summer, because man, it takes the idea of the Larkin Beer Garden and expands it times like 20, 30. So there's no reason to compete with it anymore. And, we've graduated from the Larkin Beer Garden, and there's a lot of ideas that are great in a certain time, but just no longer necessary in that specific place, and don't want it to be competition. And Pedestrian Plaza, being able to go down, and it's not about drinking. It's about gathering, and it's about being around people, and it's about being with your friends. And you can pop into any of the businesses downtown. I love grabbing a sandwich at Amazing Deli. Maybe you do go grab a cocktail at Three Bridges. It's just the ability to be able to move around in one another and remove the barriers of walls. Like legitimately and literally remove the barriers between humans, and the Pedestrian Plaza does it better than just about anywhere else I've ever seen.
Oh, agreed.
Outside of Midland, anywhere, worldwide, honestly. It is an incredible place for people to gather, and it takes the idea of how there's an issue with cars not driving right through your downtown to drive business and removes it and says, we don't need them anyways.
Right.
It's so great. So I'm going Pedestrian Plaza number 2.
That's great choice. Great choice. I think that space is huge. I mean, Main Street is a wide street, and you've got a lot of space between the buildings that are facing one another, and then they put the stage up right at McDonald and Main. And going on a Friday or Saturday with great weather in the summertime, it is packed.
Yeah.
And it's honestly, I think, one of the maybe best kept secrets of Midland, or something that I think a lot of people in the region would really, really enjoy if they experienced it, because it's a very different environment than what you get in a lot of other parts of the community, and certainly something that's very different post-pandemic. Which is really cool. And there are times, I will say, where you walk down there in the middle of the week and you feel like you see a tumbleweed, because there's just not a lot of activity. But I don't know if that's just culturally, we haven't really thought of that as like, you can still go use it at other times. And so maybe that's kind of what I'd love to say to people that maybe are listening, is like, go activate that spot at different times, or go talk to the city and see if you can do your group fitness class there, or do some type of poetry reading, or use that space in a variety of ways. And I know the city would definitely entertain any type of idea or work with you to make it fit for what you're trying to accomplish. But I think that's one thing I'd love to see more activation throughout the week, is bringing more people into that space, and then allowing them to go patronize the businesses while they're down there too.
People want to talk about what's possible in that area. Go back and listen to the episode I had with Katie Geyer when she was with the city. Adult Recess is such a cool program, and it's just interesting, and it doesn't take much to put it on. You just pop up with some hula hoops and some cornhole, and it gives people some things to do. We already mentioned Allie Huntoon, but Allied Group Fitness does classes down there, which is just cool. And sometimes you'll walk down and just see a full fitness class in front of that stage, which is just absolutely amazing. Prior to any of that, I remember a Grant Murschel about 5, 6, 7 years ago doing dance parties down there.
Hey, Lunch Beat.
Lunch Beat. Was
Yep.
that part of My Pros or was it just organic?
It was just organic. I would create Facebook events, #LunchBeat, and we'd just get a Bluetooth speaker and we'd go dance somewhere for like 20 minutes. I actually got it, shocking, out of Sweden. But there's a place in Gothenburg, Sweden called Damateo, and they have this really cool courtyard, and it really gets activated when there's the first kind of warm sunlight of the spring. But they do a thing called Lunch Beat, which is just a 20-minute kind of, in Scandinavian house music and electronica is really popular. So they just kind of get some beats going and people just dance for a few minutes. And it's really cool what they've created there. And back pre-pandemic, tried to give it a go to do that kind of stuff. And maybe it'll come back at Nord. That'd be kind of cool.
Hey, we'll bring back Lunch Beat.
There we go.
Could be a good old time.
You're right. But yeah, Adult Recess, honestly, great example of activation throughout the week. And just if Midland can continue to build on that, there's a whole big public space there that's just waiting for new ideas and just niches of people to kind of come and make it their own.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
all right, is it me now?
Yeah, I want your third.
All right, so you talked about group fitness classes.
Yeah.
I will say, and it's not because we worked on the furniture, but really, the brand new community center is like top-notch, high quality.
Amazing.
Love that place. It's very well designed. It's very open. It's airy. It's everything you want out of a workout facility in our area on gray January days. And I'm so excited to get into the spring and their first kind of full year and going into year 2. And one of the things that I know we kind of joke about networking out whenever you and I are at the place because we do more yapping than we probably do working out. But yeah, you see all sorts of people there too. And I'm excited. Just joined a co-ed volleyball league that starts there. And you can see my sweatshirt too. Big volleyball fan. We can talk about that if you want.
I'm going to ask you at the end.
But yeah, no, I think between volleyball leagues and building connection over the years there, or just simply interacting with people at the new facility, which is so open and easy to connect with people, very well designed building and definitely top third place.
I was a community center member a long time ago, and it just felt really closed off. You had to travel all these different hallways to get to places, and still an incredible facility. And, I think, again, we're talking about great leaders. I just really love Terry Johnson and what she's able to do over there. And
Andrea, Shane.
Oh my gosh. They're in such a good position with their staff.
Yep.
And they really brought this project forward in a way that felt extremely intentional. And what sold me was late November, I went in there and you were there that night. And it was just interesting. I ended up going down to the hot tub and I thought to myself, I was sitting in the hot tub. I had a friend in the sauna. You were playing drop-in volleyball. My significant other, she was lifting weights upstairs. My coworker was walking the track. And I thought to myself, this is an absolute incredible conversion of people here. And I knew at that moment I had to be a member. Because when I was younger, we would come to the Midland Community Center living in Beaverton, and it was always a very specific trip to come use the leisure pool.
Oh, sure.
And it was treated very much as kind of like a vacation thing. And I always thought it was set up pretty optimally for that. But I think they flipped it now. It feels really optimal for a membership because you walk in there and it's just open to you and you see it all and you know exactly what to expect. And even last night, I found myself playing basketball, and it was multi-generational. It was myself, my coworker Kristen, her 2 11-year-old twins. My coworker Louise was walking around the track upstairs. Somebody else I used to work with was walking up there.
Yeah.
People I see with kids coming through, and it was just an awesome conversion of people. And I'm upset you took that as your third pick. So
shoot, we did not compare lists, so now we're having to scramble.
Well, we're not supposed to. We're not supposed to.
That's a good point. So, all right.
Well, and this place deserves to get mentioned by me specifically. It's a very personal place for me, but I really love Diamond Gyms. When I first moved to the community, Diamond Gyms became a place where I just really enjoyed the food and I enjoyed the service. And a lot of times those relationships turned into similar to family, and you bicker with people like family. And I love Donald until I'll die. And he's just an incredible bartender, incredible server. And Jim created a place for people in downtown Midland, and he took that spirit with him over to Wackerly, and Jim recently passed, so I just want to remember him for a moment and what he was able to build, and that menu stays consistent. You know exactly what you're going to get for food. I usually can tell you the people that are going to be in there before I walk in there, which I really like.
Yeah.
And it's just a great place to meet with people, and a great place to have some dinner.
Yeah, agreed. It's been great to see them do well in the new location, and spent a lot of time there with just different friends and after work and things when they were downtown, and so good choice.
Absolutely. So Now you can get outside the comfort zone if you want to.
All
So
right.
I think I know what's coming next, but what's your next pick?
You know what? I'm going to go maybe something a little bit different. And I'm going to kind of think back to what really attracted me to third places was my undergrad experience in Montana.
Okay.
And Bozeman, Montana, for those that maybe haven't heard about Bozeman or learned about Bozeman at all, is a mountain town in Big Sky country. And they've always had just a really strong ethos of locally owned, locally operated coffee houses, a really top-notch food co-op. There's a whole long list. But specifically, there's a place called the Coffee Pot
Okay.
that does their own handmade pottery, Mountain Arts pottery,
All right.
out in Four Corners in the Gallatin Valley by Bozeman. And it's a family, or really just friends of mine that really feel like family. In a lot of ways, that just how close we got over college. But yeah, I would say that that's one of my top third places. Fantastic food, great coffee, just a really kind of small niche little cottage that they've turned into a showroom for their pottery and a really great kitchen. And spent a lot of time there in undergrad. And definitely Bozeman's third place scene still is, but definitely back when I was there in school, I always thought it was really cool. You could walk into a coffee house downtown, and you could be just working on your econ paper, and you'd look over and there'd be an architect that's got their plans sprawled out on the table next to you that's going on with, building this house for this couple that may have flown in from someplace in the US or international, and they're kind of working through some things that they need to. And then you look over to the next table and there's a group of ladies that maybe are talking about a book, a group of men that are maybe getting together. It's just, it was always just really cool to kind of see how the environment really was fine-tuned to what people needed. And I knew when I moved back to Midland, I wasn't necessarily going to have that. But I will say, Espresso Milano has always been a spot that I've gone to ever since high school. Oh, yeah. Still do. Still go and meet people there regularly. And but yeah, it was just another level to really see a high concentration of that in downtown, around the campus, and out to where Coffee Pot is a few miles out of town.
Now, I wanted to mention something about where I came from, too. And I went through my mind and, what was I going to mention for Beaverton? And I thought about the Roy F. Johnson Gymnasium on a Friday night for a basketball game, which kind of becomes our community's meeting room. I thought about the bowling alley where my grandpa bowled every single Wednesday night, and I spent time there. And you'd see kids you went to school with, the adults that care about you in your life, and your teachers and everyone else. And I almost went there. I almost went Beaverton Activity Center. I think what they've been able to do with my old elementary school is amazing use of space and provides a place similar to the community center. But
Yeah.
I'd be lying if I said it's one of my favorites because I'm not there.
Sure.
I go to the community center as well here in Midland.
Sure.
But a place that I do go to sometimes back home and still feel that third place feel is the Beaverton Tavern. It's a place you and I have went together. It's on the corner of Brown Street. And it's right there on M18 and Brown, and I think that it's just an absolute amazing place for that's been brought back. And those community cornerstones are so important to a small town, and for that to be owned by a family of people that I love and care about a lot. And I want to give a shout out to my friend Taylor Smith and her family for taking that project on and really bringing back a special place for Beaverton. And you and I were both at Fall Fest earlier this year where they shut down their street.
Oh,
and it's just a cool convergence to see that type of life happening back home as well. So,
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to go with the tavern.
It was cool. I mean, when we were there for Fall Fest in Beaverton, just to see the people that came together to organize the closure of the street, to bring in the band, to do the family fun earlier in the day, that's awesome. Like, to do that on a street that really changes the way that people interact with the community, it's amazing where things can go from there. And props to the folks that just really put the effort in to make that happen. That was really cool.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. Final one.
So
now maybe I know where you're going.
yeah, I think you are. I think you do. So this is definitely a big inspiration of mine for Nord Social, but there is a bar in Detroit called Collect, and they're now on, I believe, their third iteration of location.
Yes.
I was first introduced to them when they were in Eastern Market in this really cool niche of a building with a little bit of a rooftop and just a very small space, and just great bartender, very friendly, Eric. They moved out to a spot that's in an area that has seen some new investment, but a lot of disinvestment, a lot of abandoned structures that have been torn down over the years, but some really great stuff that's happening on that specific block. And so Collect is just soft spot in my heart for sure. And it's a really cool thing that they do to create in community, environment, connection, the stuff they do around the Celtic soccer team.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing is just really awesome to see people bring, kind of claim it as their own and then want to be able to facilitate what it looks like. I mean, they just did like a really cool pop-up birthday party for a longtime patron of theirs earlier this month. And I just thought that was so wonderful because they surprised her. She had no idea.
Yeah.
And they were just like, hey, you come here all the time. You're one of us. You're part of our family. Like, happy birthday.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And it's just cool to see when businesses do that kind of thing. And so, Collect for sure would be a good third place.
So I'm going to go with another spot that is, it's actually going to be outside of the area too. I'm going to go with another big city. I'm going to go Chicago on this one. This is a bar that I was introduced to by my friend Mike, who is kind of aficionado in this kind of understanding where these spaces are and how to find them. But there's a bar in Chicago called Sportsman's Club, and Sportsman's is an extremely interesting spot with a backyard where they have like pop-up chefs and like these weird like food events. And every time I'm in Chicago, I have to go to Sportsman's. It's also the #1 account of Miller High Life in the state of Illinois. Don't ask me how I know that. I just know that.
Hey, that's a badge of honor.
You know, there's cool animals on the wall, and it's just a place for people. And and that's what we're looking for. And it always becomes one of those spaces where I just feel like folks are gathering here and folks are getting to know one another here. And that's extremely important. So I think a lot of people are going to listen to this draft and tell you I'm a liar because I didn't put Buffalo Wild Wings on the list, but I intentionally stayed away from a corporate location. So, but you know, the motto is always wings, beer, sports. So
hey, there you go.
Shout out to my friends at Buffalo Wild Wings as well.
Oh yeah. That honestly, talk about really a true third place.
Yes.
I mean, corporate for sure, but at the same time, like, I've had a lot of fun at Buffalo Wild Wings, just watching games and hanging out. So many wings over the years, but and great staff.
So many wings.
Yeah, so many wings. But just great, great staff, and just it's a cool spot. And
nobody treats Buffalo Wild Wings like a hometown bar like Midland. So so it's just awesome. But you know, we've had a great time today, and you know, we've talked a lot about Nord and what you're gonna do there. And I had this little prop up here. This is a bottle of aquavit. This will not be the aquavit I think that you're going to be serving probably.
It might be.
At Nord, but it could be. There's nothing in here, people. There's no liquid. So, you know, we're not drinking on the job, but I have a couple shot glasses here. If we want to throw a little bit of water in here and cheers, I think it's okay for us to, you know, really send this off with a little bit of a celebration before we wrap it up with a couple more questions. But I want to congratulate you on starting Nord Social, and I want to congratulate Midland on obtaining it, and also having you be over at the Midland County ESA is just going to be an absolute treat for our community, and I believe you're going to do an incredible job. So
thank you.
Here's to you, and cheers.
Right.
And
cheers.
They call these a polar bear. It's just all water.
It's all water. Believe it.
Yeah,
all right.
No problems there. So, I do want to mention your sweatshirt real quick. And
sure.
I know that you specifically wore this on the show today for a reason. It says volleyball is the next major league. As long as I've known you, you've been a huge fan of volleyball. And I just want to talk about your relationship to volleyball and what it means to you.
Yeah. So I would say in kind of deepest of terms, volleyball has always been my like place of escape. So I remember growing up, my parents played in volleyball leagues when we lived in Wyoming, and we would be there in their community center in Moreland, where we would kind of have to entertain ourselves for a little bit of time. And I just remember watching and thinking like, this is really cool. And then they actually did a program, a league as young as second and third grade. So that was my first exposure to actually playing on a team. And just happened to be that I kind of took to it naturally. And so I think that early success is really what encouraged me to want to stick with it. But I played just kind of for fun when we lived in Freeland. There's weren't boys programs in high school at all. There is coming in Michigan more and more, and even to Midland and Dow High soon. So that's exciting. Huge news for volleyball. But yeah, I played club out of Grand Rapids growing up. We did a lot of traveling into other states because Illinois, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, they've all had boys volleyball for decades. So we'd play a lot of those teams. And that got me a lot of exposure to really Chicago when I was a lot younger. And then I actually coached when I was at Montana State for some middle school and high school girls teams out there.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But I think that experience really kind of drew me to realize the importance of like organized things, organized sports. I think you build a lot of character, and you have a lot of good experiences by having to understand your role within a broader team. Being a coach really puts into in a position where there is a microscope on you at all times. So you've really got to be acting and doing things in a very high model way in order to get the best out of your team. There is no do as I say, not as I do when you coach, because teams just can't function that way. You've got to be a good role model. So I learned a lot from coaching, built a lot of good friendships, a lot of people I'm still closely connected with there too. And then, quite frankly, watching the explosion of volleyball across the nation the last few years has been fantastic. There's now 2 or 3 really women's professional leagues in the United States. The national teams, both men's and women's, have been top-notch programs for decades, but we've never had a professional league that supports that high quality. They've all had to go international to places like Europe or Brazil or Japan, South Korea. So it's been cool to kind of see all that happen. Last year when the University of Nebraska had that big, massive sellout at their football stadium for their team.
How many thousands of people was
that?
I
It
mean,
was almost 100,000.
It's amazing.
Over 90. Yeah, just like incredible stuff, incredible scenes. Nebraska has a whole history of why volleyball is so popular. But I also think like it's been fun in a lot of ways. I was kind of reflecting back on this the other night when I was playing at the community center. Volleyball is a sport. There's a lot of sports that allow you to play it throughout a variety of years of life. But I do think volleyball is one where you do get a lot of years out of it because for the most part, it can be fairly low impact, although there is a lot of jumping involved. But it doesn't have kind of that cardiovascular push that maybe soccer or basketball does. It's a little bit anaerobic in that way. But I think it's also a medium to really explore activity that's a little bit different than maybe our other traditional sports.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot of niches to it. I love it. I think it's just really great entertainment. It's constant action with very little breaks in between. And it's been cool to kind of see, and I'm excited to get back into the coaching world here shortly if things pan out. So we'll leave it at that.
Okay, fair enough.
Because there's other stuff that has
How many announcements can we fit in one episode?
Right? Yeah. But no, it's cool. It's cool to kind of balance it all. But no, it's definitely a big passion of mine, and to be able to still play. And for places like the community center to do leagues and stuff is just really cool.
Yeah, so if you guys want to go get smoked by Grant's team, show up at the community center sometime, and they'll teach you a lesson, and he'll
Maybe.
Don't go make people not want to play volleyball anymore.
It's true.
Though.
It's true. Oh yeah.
You gotta.
All skill sets are welcome.
Like
100%. And I'm actually hopeful that maybe people will adopt NORD as their like Big Ten volleyball central.
Oh.
Like volleyball every Wednesday night or something like that. I don't know. You know who knows what's gonna happen?
Can't Wednesday Survivor night.
Oh,
so everyone watches Survivor, Grant. So
that's a good point. That's a good point.
No, that's funny because that was part of one of your original pitches when you were making the videos.
Yes.
You wrote it in the script, and Brad's like, "Why is there Survivor?" It's like, well,
apparently it's still huge.
Well, yeah, everyone watches Survivor.
Huge.
So now we want to wrap it up a little bit, and we're going to do it the same way that we end every single episode of the Maxwell's Midland Show. And really looking forward to hearing your stance on this. But you've already talked a lot about community vision, and you've talked a lot about community development and the way you would like to see Midland to go. So looking forward to the future of Midland, what's something that you would really look for our community?
So I think it's around approach is what I'd say. So I think that there's a lot of study and research and thought that goes into what Midland should do in terms of big steps. There's a lot of little steps that are happening here and there with just progress and community development and the like. But when it comes to kind of big steps, there's a whole lot of study and not necessarily a whole lot of action. And when you look at a lot of the big things that have happened in Midland over the last many decades, it usually is kind of one person that's kind of got a crazy idea of, I'm going to go and I'm going to get this. And we've had some really great blessings to our community because of ambitious people. And this isn't to speak critically, I guess, of like governing bodies of organizations or the like, but maybe it's just an encouraging thing to say, study, take a moment to pause, and then go for it.
Yes.
Communicate the heck out of it as to why you're doing it, but then just go for it. And
together,
really,
forward and bold.
Absolutely. I mean, it really does connect back to that. But that's one thing I've always kind of wished more of Midland would be. Don't get into this kind of rhythm of study, and just kind of not necessarily take action, but still study and then communicate the why to the community and then go for it. Because no matter what you do, you will have naysayers. You will always have people that don't like what's happening, and they can be very loud voices. But I think too often times we get hung up on those things and we don't go as far as we really should to steward the community into the next generation. Because we're a little bit anxious or timid or fearful. I think it was Angela Merkel that said failure has never been a good advisor. So that's one thing I always think about is like, if you're making this decision out of fear of what could happen, it's not a really good advisor. Think more about the possibilities after you've done your due diligence to really study and make sure that this is the right move or a very good move.
Well said. And thank you so much for coming on the Max Loves Midland show. We really appreciate having you here, and you've been a supporter of this show since day one. So it's just been great to have you on. But one more thing, where can people follow Nord at? Is there a spot yet?
There is. Yeah. So we're on Facebook and we're also on Instagram. Nord Social Midland is the pages for both of those. So yeah, we'd love to have you follow us along. We don't have much content out there just yet, but that's okay because we're going to build it as we go, and really hope that people feel a connection to it and want to be a part of it along with us.
Awesome. Well, I follow the Instagram. I didn't know the Facebook was out there, so
yes,
I'm gonna have to follow the Facebook page so I can be along for that journey. So.
Hey, appreciate it.
Well, thank you for coming on, and thank you guys for being along for this journey as well. It's been another great episode of the Max Loves Midland show. Make sure you head over to maxlovesmidland.com. That's where you're going to find all your community resources. We've had over 3,500 events posted on our community calendar. That's 3,500 plus opportunities for community members to interact and meet with one another. And this is now, I think, the 17th episode of the Max Loves Midland show. And if you don't feel like watching every single episode, if this might be your first time, why don't you go back and take a look at some of those old clips? We got thousands of views on some of these short ones. And I think you'll really get a kick out of a lot of the guests that we've had on, and you quite possibly maybe be enticed to watch another long episode. So we appreciate having you with us, and we look forward to having you again next week. And we're signing off here again with the Max Loves Midland show. And as we always say, if you build a bridge and it doesn't work, go ahead, build a tridge. Subscribe wherever you consume media. Max Loves Midland is your entertainment, resources, and collective improvement hub for Midland County. Plan your next adventure in Midland at maxlovesmidland.com.